We must end the COVID economy of government handouts. Furthermore, this bill creates yet another new grant program at the SBA. The SBA, in my judgment, is incapable of operating grant programs. Let's briefly examine how they have performed over the last 2 years, Mr. Speaker. The Economic Injury Disaster Loan Program, also known as EIDL, is filled with fraud and identity theft issues. This is per the IG, the Inspector General, and there's a report. And the SBA is a black hole when it comes to answering questions for our constituent businesses. We've all had businesses in our district struggle with getting information for their grant application. Frankly, this direct lending and direct grant program from the SBA has been a disaster. 30% fraud rate in it. That's the IG report numbers. Yet the SBA continues to defer idle payments. The second grant program was the Shuttered Venue Operators Grant Program. The SVOG was signed into law in December 2020. Disappointingly, and after long delays, the SBA attempted to launch this program in April, 4 months later. My colleagues and I sent multiple letters and letters to the SBA regarding this delay. The night before it went live, SBA's Inspector General sent in a warning signal. He said, SBA, you're not ready to do this. You're not up and running yet. But did they listen? Of course not. They went ahead anyway, and within hours, the whole program crashed. The program then took 2 more months to launch. This is unacceptable, Mr. Speaker. We've got to do a better job than this. They have to do a better job than this. The last program was the Restaurant Revitalization Fund. I'd like to remind everyone that this program was woefully underfunded by my Democrat colleagues. However, more shocking was the fact that congressional Democrats, the Biden administration, and the SBA prioritized certain businesses over others. The RRF program was fundamentally unfair. They picked winners and losers with American taxpayer dollars. It was so bad, the Sixth Circuit Court of Appeals declared this program unconstitutional, Mr. Speaker. They declared the whole program unconstitutional. The court's majority opinion stated that the SBA injected explicit racial and ethnic preferences into the priorities. Enough is enough. If you judge the future by the past, as my dad once said, it is clear the SBA is unable to properly and prudently manage grant programs and safeguard American taxpayer dollars. Not only does the SBA have a disastrous past of administering grant programs, but any new dollars flowing will add fuel to the inflation fire. I want to be clear, this bill is supposedly paid for by recovered funds. At best, this is an IOU, Mr. Speaker. And lastly, and again, according to the IG, financial institutions have returned approximately $3.1 billion in financial fraud funding. That's not near enough to cover the $55 billion that this program wants to spend. Now more than ever, small businesses need to escape the overbearing reach of the federal government. If we want to help small businesses, then we need to stop this out-of-control spending. We should prioritize lowering taxes so small business owners and their workers can keep more of their hard-earned money, and we must reduce regulations that bog down businesses and paperwork with compliance costs. I would argue that the 2017 Tax Cut and Jobs Act is the reason we have the good economy we have today, because we continue to allow the business and individuals to keep their hard-earned dollars and invest them as they see fit. Where if we tax them to death, those dollars come out of the system, and suddenly we limit their ability to drive our economy. We simply need to move on from this COVID economy. In my judgment, this is an irresponsible bill. I urge my colleagues to oppose it. Mr. Speaker, this is about economic independence. And with that, I reserve the balance of my time.
Gentleman reserves. Gentlewoman is recognized.
Mr. Speaker, I yield 1 minute to the distinguished House Majority Leader, Mr. Hoyer of Maryland.
The gentleman is recognized.
Thank the gentlelady for yielding. And I would respond, this bill is about economic resilience. You can't be independent if you go bankrupt. You can't be independent if you can't operate your business. I've gone into restaurant after restaurant in my district, and the owners of those restaurants have had thanks for me, for the Congress, and yes, for the administration, including Donald Trump, who signed many of these bills. That at a time of extraordinary stress, through no fault of their own, but a pandemic that attacked all of us, they were able to keep their heads above water, pay their employees, even if they couldn't be open, transfer to carry out, and do so many things that they were able to do to remain viable, which is, by the way, why almost every state has a surplus. Why? Because revenues did not fall as they were projected to fall. That is true in my state. I think it's true in almost every state. Why didn't revenues fall? Because we kept people above water. Now, in this particular program that passed, in many respects, with bipartisan support in 2020, and in 2020, but in December of 2020 as well, there were some 250,000 plus who were eligible under the rules that we drafted and passed, but only about 100,000 of them got relief, which means that we left behind 150,000 people who were eligible under the rules that we set. And now, some would say to those that were left behind, you're on your own. That's not what we're going to do today. We're not going to tell them you're on your own. We're going to tell them we understand how important you are to the life of our country, to the economy of our country, to the people of our country. We enacted the American Rescue Plan we set aside, which I want to make clear did not get any Republican votes. We set aside $28.6 billion in emergency grants to help restaurants and bars that have experienced significant revenue losses due to COVID-19 restrictions. Those restrictions were necessary, which is why, hopefully, we're coming out of not only the initial assault, but the variance assault. The aim was to help them stay open to keep their employees on the payroll. I suggest if we had not done that, it wouldn't be independence that they would have experienced. They would have experienced recession and perhaps depression. That funding quickly ran out, however, with only a third of restaurants that applied for assistance ultimately receiving it.
Somebody give it to me. Somebody give it to me. Somebody. Yeah. Somebody say, hey, we want a 10K. Yeah. Hey, we want a 10K. Yeah. Hey, we want a 10K. Yeah. Hey, we want a 10K. Give it to me. Me and my friends, we like to play this game. Some call us annoying, but we think it's a shame. All find time to chat and go live and get with the House and Senate on the phone and online. We even tweet the press when we feel like we're stuck on Bill S513. Say you're out of luck, but I think that it's time that they hear our voice and then we say it louder because it's our choice.